Hi everyone, this is Rev Kymmi.
And I'm Dr. G, and this is Season 1, Episode 15, Quinton Simon, the tipster behind the scenes. And for our new listeners, we will give you a quick background on ourselves.
Professionally, I've worked at law firms for nearly 30 years as a civil trial paralegal and litigation paralegal, and at times I'm also the law firm administrator. I'm an ordained Christian Reverend licensed minister in all states. My prophetic ministry gift so happens to work successfully on missing person cases. I am not a psychic or a medium. If anybody wants to know more information about me, you can read my bio on my Facebook About tab or on LinkedIn bio, found as Kymmi Bloomberg. That's Kymmi Bloomberg, Bloomberg.
And I'm Dr. G, and I am a university professor in criminal justice. I am an internationally known lecturer in forensic victimology and victimology. I am a certified gang specialist, and I work with a international gang research center. And I am also been working very diligently over the last year, and I am now also an ordained Pentecostal reverend, and I'm very proud to have a testimony for Jesus. So,
and I want to add, because he doesn't ever share the information, but you can find Dr. G on Amazon Prime right now, guys. Not Google, but do a search, Smiley Face Killers, The Hunt for Justice. He's Doc on that true crime series with his New York homicide detective friends.
Yeah, I also wrote a book with Detective Gannon, Case Studies in Drowning Forensics. And so I do know quite a bit about postmortem artifacts and the postmortem interval and stuff like that. So we haven't started all our podcasts with this, but I'd like to start this one out with a shout out to some of our new listeners from across the United States and the planet.
Yeah, let's do that. Hi everyone who's new. New listeners, welcome.
Yes. We have, here in the United States, we have Florida. We have a lot of listeners in Florida, and they include Deltona, Fort Lauderdale, Homosassa, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Miami, and a new one that popped up on the radar, Rockledge, Titusville, and Winter Park. And then we have a relatively new but a very stable listener down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and one in Meredith, New Hampshire, Portland, Oregon. What do we have internationally, Kymmi?
You tell us, Dr. G.
Okay. Well, we picked up a new one in this last week in Karachi, in Pakistan. And then we have one in Yavna, Israel, and India. We have quite a following in India. We picked up a couple more cities there. So now we have Chennai, Delhi, Kolkata, Lucknow, and Patna. Australia is a really good one for us, too. And we thank you for joining us in Adelaide, Brisbane, and Sydney.
For those who don't know, our podcast is only about 4 months old, and we have been heard in almost every United States, and as well as the fact that over 20 countries. So we thank you all so much for listening.
Yep. So we're talking about Quinton Simon. And before we get into the details of this, Kymmi, I didn't even know about it until you mentioned it to me. How did you learn about this case, and when did you get involved?
You know what, quite frankly, I didn't know about it either.
Really?
The public contacted me by Facebook, the instant messenger. And people were contacting me about, hey, do you know about this case? And could I get involved? I told him I had never heard about it, but I'll look into it. So I did some research and found out a little bit about it. Sad situation. Very sad. Just a 20-month-old little boy.
So when, so our listeners have a better understanding of what this is, your involvement. What does it exactly involve? I mean, do you see the past? If the victim is deceased, do you speak with the dead? Do you see what's going on at the immediate moment? Do you see what's in the future? I mean, can you explain this a little bit for our listeners?
Yeah, I don't talk to the dead. I never have. I used to use my intuition and develop it, but later on I became a believer about 1997, and I received the Holy Spirit, who gave me the gift of prophecy. You can find that in the book of Acts. It says that even your daughters will prophesy. Mm-hmm. So that's what God uses me for. I cannot control my gifts. I can't control God, as no one can. So I just go into praise and worship and the intent that God showed me the truth. And He reveals information to me, what He wants me to know, and for me to share with whomever to help the victim. And most of the time that is information directly to the lead detective on the case.
Do you get any insight into how the crime is committed, or the motive of the offender, or...
God can show me anything and everything.
Oh.
Everything. Even their heart intent, their motive.
Okay.
Was it something that was planned, premeditated, or spur of the moment, out of rage or something? But, to be honest with you, the more I think about... When I work on these cases, I get sad and I cry, of course, as anyone probably does. And it really is important to do like law enforcement does, or first responders, which is to stay detached. I do more effective work being detached from the scenario, the victims, etc. I just get in and get out, just get the information to help the victim, hopefully, give it to law enforcement and move on. Try not to be attached to the case. But at times when I do, and I'm human, and I cry, because these are sad stories, true stories. And so, I'm a movie buff, if you guys don't know that, and I really enjoy action movies, and I'm a fan of Tom Cruise as an actor, and I love his movies. And one of my favorite movies is Minority Report. And within that, of course, I like it because there's precogs, they call them. There's a few people, I think it's 3, who are used by law enforcement to give, they see in the future, and they give the officers information, as like I do, but they give the information before an incident occurs to stop it from happening, a murder. And so I reflect back on this movie, and I think, God, I feel like I'm too late. I'm arriving after the person's dead. And I wish I could get information prior to it occurring to stop and to save people. Like they do in Minority Report. Have you seen that movie, Dr. G?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Then you know what I'm talking about. There's 3 precogs, aren't there? In the water,
I think. There are three in the
twins,
water, yeah.
Twins, and then the girl, right?
It's...
I haven't watched it for a few years, but I think that's the scenario.
Boy, we could do a whole podcast on that movie alone and the constitutional issues. In class, I've talked to students about that.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, and invasion of privacy and search and seizure. And you can go on for, like I said, a whole podcast in and of itself. Yeah, very, very interesting. It to some extent, I do understand that. When I first got into this field, and I was a criminal justice major, working on my master's. And, of course, the emphasis was on criminological theory. And my mentor was a victimologist. And it didn't take me very long to realize that crime or a victimization event involved a criminal and a victim, an offender and a victim, and it occurred somewhere in time. So that, like, time is the coin, and then the offender is one side, and the victim is the other side, heads and tails. So to understand the whole event, you had to look at both sides of the coin. So that's what got me into victimology to begin with. And I soon realized that efforts by law enforcement and society in crime prevention were only reasonably effective because, I don't hang out with offenders, but I do hang out with people who could be potential victims. We're more likely to see them. They're our neighbor, our children, and so forth.
Yeah, I think we can all become a victim.
Yeah.
I mean, especially nowadays, my goodness. People just driving their car.
Yeah.
Someone just got shot, driving his car the other day, right?
And that's where I really started my shift personally.
And it makes you want to just stay in your house and, and lock yourself in, and you're good to go. But the thing is, you can't live that way.
You could. But that's where my focus on victims shifted from the criminal, from the offender to the victim, because if I learn about victimization events, where they occur in space and time, and I learn about who the victims are, potential victims even, then I can reach out to them and say, hey, wake up, pay attention here. If you don't change your lifestyle, you don't change the way you're going, you're headed towards a victimization.
I don't even think that most people are aware of their surroundings, who's around, and etc.
Yeah. But my emphasis in victimization has also made me very aware of the statistics that are out there. And here we are again, much like some of the other recent podcasts that we've done. We're talking about, as we will see, a biological parent brutalizing their own child. I just don't get it. I don't have any of my own children, but I have a grandchild now, and I see others who have children, and children are so precious, and it just hurts me to the quick. I don't understand how a parent can be so unloving. And I think about the love of God for us, and Jesus to actually put himself up on the cross to die for us.
I don't want to make up excuses for sin, for murder, but it seems like just a few of these cases that we've worked on, such as like Harmony Montgomery.
Yeah, Abby and
this
Libby,
one, let's just name this one in Harmony Montgomery.
Oh, Harmony.
Okay, her dad harmed her. But the thing is that what was involved with the commonality? Drugs.
Yeah.
People just need to refrain from drugs.
Yeah.
They're not good.
And both of them were, defenseless children under 4 years old, 5 years old. Anyway, let's get on with the show here. So, quickly, some background information on the characters, the actors in this story. Quinton Simon, he's 20 months old. A little baby white male child in Savannah, Georgia. And the timeline, this was a very short story, not as short as the episode on Rachel Castillo, but this started on October 5th and ended just recently, November 21st. It involves the mother, Leilani Simon, her boyfriend, live-in boyfriend, the grandparents, which include her mother, and a law enforcement. And I will give the name of one individual, Chief Jeff Hadley with Chatham County Police Department, and exemplary actions down there in how they wrap this up and the steadfastness of law enforcement in this case. It starts out much sooner than we thought. There were some issues in the family, a lot of quarreling back and forth as far as Wednesday, September 7th, 2022, this year, when the grandparents the mother in particular got into a fight with Quinton's mother, and they ended up calling police over to the house, and a lot of bickering back and forth, and a reporter on the scene did some investigation, talking to police and to Leilani's brother, and he told them that Quinton's mom had a history of stealing and using money to buy drugs. So as you said, Kymmi, drugs is a common theme here. They alter our thinking and
behavior.
We do stuff that we just normally wouldn't do when you're addicted to a drug. The next day, Thursday, September 8th, Quinton's maternal grandmother, his mom's mom, wanted the daughter and her boyfriend evicted from the house. They were living in her house and wanted them out of there. She didn't want any money. She just wanted her 22-year-old daughter, Leilani, and her boyfriend and the 3 kids that she had to leave. The grandmother wrote that her daughter and her boyfriend had damaged her property and no one is living in peace. That's a quote. So I can imagine that. Quite a bit of trouble there. The story jumped into Friday, September 16th, when the boyfriend found and Leilani found out about the eviction, and things really got bad from there. Now, I believe, and I searched, but didn't you find something about child support, Kymmi?
Yeah, I just heard that from Googling that custody was given to Leilani's mother, and as a result, Leilani had to pay child support to her own mom.
To support Quinton?
No, she has the 2 boys.
Oh, for all of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. So here we have a mother losing custody of her own children and having to pay child support. Wow. Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the timeline. We jump forward from September 16th to October 5th, 2022. At 5:29 a.m., the babysitter, Quinton's babysitter, got a text message from Leilani saying that she didn't have to watch the kids that morning. And in reading about that, the babysitter said that even on days when Leilani was sick or she didn't have to work, she still babysat the kids. So this was completely out of the norm. That's at 5:29, 5:30 a.m. At 6 o'clock...
That's a big red flag.
At 6 o'clock, the live-in boyfriend says that he was leaving for work and he saw Quinton in his playpen in their home. That's at 6 a.m. Now, this is a whole half hour after the mother's already told the babysitter, you don't have to babysit the kids today. So 9 a.m. rolls around, and the grandparent sends the babysitter a text. Have you seen Quinton? What? At 9:40 a.m., now this is 40 minutes later, keep in mind, at 6 a.m., the live-in boyfriend saw Quinton in his playpen, and not until 9:40 a.m. does the mother, Leilani, call 911 to report that Quinton's missing. The front door is open, and she believes somebody walked in and snatched him, abducted him. It's like, really? It took you 3.5 hours from the time your live-in boyfriend left to figure out that the child was missing? And this is actually, when you think about it, 5:30 to 9:40. From when she apparently was awake enough that she went and texted the babysitter and then calls 911 and says, my child is missing. Where has she been in the meantime?
I'm a mother of 2 daughters. Though they're not infants or toddlers, they're adults and on their own. But being a mother, and if I had a 20-year-old who went missing, at 6 a.m. I'd be frantically calling the police immediately, getting everybody on it. I'd be bawling, screaming, like eventually having to be medicated to calm me down.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Truly, that's the way a real mother, I think,
I'd have
and
been
father
out there
acts.
knocking on every door and
Yep.
chopping down every bush in the neighborhood trying to find
I mean,
my
if you
child.
think about it, look what I do for strangers on cases, right? For instance, this one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I don't even know these people, never met them, haven't gone on site to these locations on this case.
Now here you go, folks.
But I'm still helping.
Here you go. I know, and I've seen my share of investigations and searches, and we've given some kudos out in some previous ones that we've talked about, and this folks is another one of those. And hats off to Chief Hadley. He got that search up and running at a sprint. That day, I can't believe all the resources that he pulled in, like right now. The Chatham County Police Department, his group, Savannah Police Mounted Patrol, the FBI came in. Now, I'm not talking like 2-3 days or weeks later. That day he got them there. Liberty County Sheriff's Office K-9 team. They got the now this is ingenious and being creative with your resources. They got the mosquito control helicopter to take part in the search. They got neighbors out there to help. And they were up and down and they tore that place apart all day, working until 2 a.m. And then they all returned at 8 a.m. the next morning to go back out there and do more interviews and get the search going again. And they went through phone records and they went looking for video cameras in the vicinity, and they got search warrants going for the home.
Quick question for you, Dr.
Crazy.
G.
Impressive. Absolutely impressive, Chief. Good job.
Now, I want you guys all to know that, I'm not involved in Dr. G's research. What I do, he's not involved in, right, with my gifts.
Right.
And we come together and do this podcast without knowing what each other is going to say. So, with his notes here, now what's the mosquito control helicopter? How does that differ from any other helicopter? What do us laymen need to know here?
Well,
who shop for a living, and you were in the military as a captain.
It's not like a life flight, where it's just got skids on it or wheels on it or something. This is a thing that's rigged up, with tanks and arms that can probably fold up but stick out with sprayers on them, so they can fly over like a crop duster. I mean, it's not designed to go out there, but it is a helicopter.
Okay.
So he's thinking outside the box here.
I like that.
Get a drone out there, get the helicopter out there, any aerial assets. I mean, I think it's pretty clever.
I would have been with the mounted patrol.
Yeah.
I ride horses, if you guys don't know that.
I probably would have been with
since
the
I was
canines.
7.
I like dogs. But getting the mosquito control, that is really thinking outside the box and using your resources. And wow. So anyway, they search and they search and they search. They searched ponds. They searched the backyard pool. I mean, they're out there 18, 20 hours a day. They're going at it for day after day after day. They set up a phone tip line dedicated just for Quinton. And they recanvass all these areas. I mean, they are looking for this kid, trying to find him. They even brought in the fire department to pump the backyard pool. Now, when I first heard that, I'm like, it's a pool. Can't you just look in it and see if there's anything in it? But just to make sure, they pumped that thing out. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's thoroughness, folks. That is being thorough. Okay. Monday, October 10th. So now we're a whole 5 days later, and up until now, it's been a missing person investigation. And to a scale like we've only seen in a few other cases. On that day, there was an announcement at a press conference that the chief gave where the investigation changed. The search for Quinton was no longer going to be confined to a missing child investigation. And he said, we are looking at the criminal investigation aspect of it as well. So this is when it switched. And, what caused that switch? This is October 10th. He's only been missing 5 days. And already they got some suspicions going on here. Let's see, October 11th. The next day is when the police issue a statement saying that they had seized evidence that they believed would lead to the closure in the investigation. They didn't say what it was yet. They didn't say. The next day, Wednesday, October 12th, 2022, they say, we are saddened to report that CCPD, the Chatham County Police Department, and the FBI have notified Quinton Simon's family that we believe he is deceased. We have named his mother, Leilani Simon, as the prime suspect in his disappearance and death, but no arrests have been made and no charges filed. Now that's October 12th. And the search continues from the 13th to the 17th. I mean, they are going at it. Going at it. Tuesday, October 18th. The police say, and the FBI, that Quinton's remains were placed in a dumpster and taken to a nearby landfill. And an extensive search of the landfill is underway. We're talking about the waste management landfill out there at Little Neck Road. Now, if you've been following this, and of course we hadn't even heard of the case at this point, but I go back and look at the news articles and we see the film footage and the pictures.
And apparently, like, millions of people are following this, right?
Yeah, millions.
I mean, they're out in their yard protesting and but I'd never heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Until people were writing me to please help them.
Yep. And when you look at the pictures, I mean, these are all folks, volunteers, out there putting on the moon suits and with rakes and going through the landfill, and, incredible. And Wednesday, October 19th, 2022, the search of the landfill continued. And media is reporting that multiple witnesses say that the mother, Leilani Simon, and her mother were seen drinking shots at the TB Island establishment, and that some family members had stayed there. And it's like, your child is missing, and you're out partying.
I'd be searching everywhere, under every, rock, and turning everything over. There's no way you're going to find me in a bar.
Yeah, terrible. Okay, now it's almost a month has gone by. 4 weeks had passed. It's Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022. And, they say bad things come in threes. Quinton's paternal grandfather is killed by a hit-and-run driver.
That's awful.
That's just terrible. Terrible. The search at the landfill continues every day. I mean, they're out there. But then on November 10th through Sunday, November 13th, the landfill search was suspended due to Tropical Storm Nicole. But they picked back up on Monday, November 14th. And that's when the work resumed at the landfill search. And the police said that there is no scheduled end date for the search. And it has been physically, mentally, emotionally burdensome on dozens of law enforcement. So Monday, November 14th. Okay. Now, if I recall what you told us earlier, this is an important point to stop in my review of the timeline. Because isn't November 14th the day that the folks on the internet reached out to you and we both became... I remember when you told me about that, I'm like, oh my God, not another child.
Yeah, they reached out to me Monday, November 14th, 2022. Early in the morning.
And what happened on that day?
Well, I just told them that I would research it. And from looking at it, I saw that they had evidence of, possible evidence or concrete evidence of somehow the trash bin, and that led to the landfill they were digging in, and that they had a suspect, the mother. So I'm thinking, okay, the way I'm trained as a minister is, if somebody asks for my help, if I'm able, I need to help. Okay, so the public were asking me to get involved. But from looking at this, I didn't feel that law enforcement needed my help, quite frankly. But the thing is that what I could offer was to affirm their person of interest and to affirm that he is dead, or just to affirm the information, or to affirm also the landfill where they're looking. Is that where he is? Okay, just affirm the information and or belief, what it is that they believe, that they think they know on the case, which I believe they totally knew. They knew without me.
Okay,
quite frankly,
okay.
I'm just going to say it as it is.
But
I wanted to be respectful. I need to, the way I'm trained, just go ahead and do it. I sought the Lord and I prayed and I got information. And so, but first on the 14th, I did an introduction email to the police chief, and I wrote him on, like I said, November 14th, Monday at 9:33 a.m. And I said, regarding Quinton Simon, some members of the public have reached out to me via Facebook to please help on the case of Quinton Simon, which I have never heard about until this morning. I am known for the prophetic gift, helping victims through tipping off law enforcement or working with them in collaboration. Note that my law enforcement reference, and because he's confidential, I'm going to redact that information here. That's for law enforcement information only, not for the public. And I said that he CC'd herein. I always CC him so he could read it. How could be your reference if you're not reading what I'm saying to other law enforcement, right? Mm-hmm. I told those people who reached out to me that it does not appear you would need my assistance, utilizing my Christian ordained Reverend ministry prophetic gifts to determine what happened. Is he alive or dead, and who did it, and where is he now? It appears you believe his mother did it, and he unfortunately died, and he's in the landfill you are digging through presently. I guess what I can do is affirm your person of interest, affirm if he's alive or dead, affirm if he's in that landfill or not. If not, then where is he? I will seek God for those answers and email you both of the prophetic analysis of this very sad case that hopefully will help you. And so anyway, then I go on just a little bit more and give him a lot of background information, other cases that I've helped on in other law enforcement, so that he's aware of who I am.
Okay. Did anything else transpire on the 14th?
Yeah, the chief wrote me back on November 14th, 2022 at 11:36 a.m. Now, not only is the chief very impressive of what he's actually doing on the case, right, to search, find evidence, etc., but now he's, just a couple hours returned email to me. Personally, I wrote him. And he said, thank you for your email and information on the Quinton Simon case, and that they were working diligently to locate him. And he said that he would forward my email to the appropriate staff member. So this guy is great, isn't he?
Yeah, and I'm looking at the email. I think that's a very good paraphrase of it. And okay. So now you guys have touched base, and it's really what you said before is starting to make sense, and I'll comment on that in a second. What happened the next couple of days?
Okay, well, the next day, I go into praise and worship is how I get my information mainly from God. And of course, you put your prayer out there, your intent of what you want from God. And I never know what God is going to show me. But I was able to write him with the information on the police chief, November 15th at 6:48 p.m. And here's what I wrote. Prophetic analysis of missing person case of Quinton Simon by Rev. Kymmi. Dear Chief, as you recall, I emailed you my introduction a day ago. Please forward to the appropriate investigator handling this case. My law enforcement reference is CC'd herein for his awareness of my work. After praying and seeking God, he showed me the following via my Christian ordained Reverend ministry prophetic gift. the Holy Spirit gift. And then I say, see Holy Bible, Book of Acts 2:17, quote, that daughters will prophesy, end quote. Number 1, I do see and know that Quinton is unfortunately deceased. As such, I'm affirming what you believe or know. Number 2, I do see and sense that Quinton's cause of death is by suffocation. His ability to breathe was interrupted such by something unnatural, such as suffocation by hands or similar like a pillow, or by drowning, etc., whatever scenario that would take away his natural breathing. Number 3, I do see and know that a trash truck picked up the remains of Quinton. God kept showing me a trash truck again and again strongly. As such, I'm affirming what you believe or know. Number 4, based on number 3 above, logically Quinton would be in an appropriate landfill. As such, I'm affirming what you believe or know. Number 5, your person of interest, Leilani Simon, is the correct person who is responsible for Quinton's death. As such, I am affirming what you believe or know. Keep going. God bless you all. In his service, Rev. Kymmi.
Okay. Like I said, now what you were talking about earlier really makes a lot of sense when you were referencing and discussing the Minority Report.
Yeah, because I feel sad that I'm too late.
Yeah, but I might add here, interject, whatever, that most of what you provided them, as we discovered, was some very serious affirmation of their work and what was going to transpire and had transpired for them.
I think that God used me to encourage them to keep going. Maybe they needed it.
Yeah. Yeah, and keep in mind that was the 14th and 15th when you interacted with them. And at that point, they were still out at the landfill digging around every day with all those volunteers. Now, I'd like to point out, before I move on with the timeline.
I just want to say something. Sorry, Dr. G. God never showed me the trash bin that they had some evidence on. God kept showing me the trash truck.
Yep.
Which would be attached to their trash bin, right, as an affirmation. Mm-hmm. But what God shows me sometimes always doesn't, it differs, but it has the same meaning and conclusion in the end.
Yeah, and you mentioned one thing, cause of death, and of course this is my area of expertise in working with Detective Sergeant Gannon and a few other individuals like that read our book and quality controlled our work, Dr. Cyril Wecht. The cause of death, you mentioned that, and I must note that I've read too many autopsies. It'll be interesting to see how this one pans out because, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But cause of death must be medical. I've seen in the past where drowning was put down. And no, drowning doesn't kill you. Drowning is a scenario. That's like saying stepping off the building is what killed him, or stepping into traffic and getting hit by a truck is what killed him. No, that would be, and not gravity. Gravity didn't kill him, or inertia, but traumatic brain trauma, severe hemorrhaging of the brain, destruction of the medulla oblongata, or breaking of the spinal cord, or something like that would be the cause of death, the stoppage of the heart. And based on what you described very clearly to them, the cause of death would be anoxia, which would be no oxygen, or extreme hypoxia, low oxygen, which would eventually could make a person pass out, and then their brain and their nervous system could shut down, but most likely anoxia.
What's interesting is that, Dr. G, Most of the time, God will show me the cause of death, like exactly I watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I can, like you're standing there watching it, guys. Someone being murdered.
Yeah.
That's how I see things, okay? Most of the time. But God knows I want nothing to do with kids. I can't deal with kids.
Yeah.
And God didn't show me, right, guys?
I know.
He didn't show me.
I asked you, was it
No.
human intervention?
All I know is he couldn't breathe, naturally could not breathe.
And I said he was
God didn't
20
show
months
me
old.
because he doesn't want me going around crying for a month.
Yeah. Did he roll over in bed, face
No.
down, and suffocate?
He did not show me.
That would be an accidental. Or
He's done that
death.
before when it involves children. God does not show me because he
or
knows
what
I'll
do
be
they-
a
what do they
mess.
call that other one? I don't know the age limit on it, but what is the one where babies just stop breathing?
Oh, you mean SIDS?
Oh, SIDS. Yeah, that's it. And it wasn't that.
No, it's not.
And you
SIDS.
very clearly said it was unnatural.
Yeah, such
Okay,
as
so
those
now
instances
now
that
we're
I
getting
gave.
into manner of death, and there are 5. When you're writing an autopsy report, this is something the medical examiner has to determine. There are 5 manners of death, and for you nerds out there that like to learn this stuff, it's NASHU. NASHU is the way
That's
I
an
teach
acronym?
it. Yeah, NASHU. Natural, accidental, suicide, homicide, and then if you can't figure it out, the last one is undetermined. It's like the catch-all. And I learned in New York they call them cuppies, case undetermined pending investigation. You know, additional information comes in. So unfortunately, sometimes you can get an undetermined cause of death and an undetermined manner of death, and that's an extremely cold case.
I think, Dr. G, they're going to have to rule undetermined on this one because they have partial remains. They're not going to know cause of death.
Right.
They're going to say on his
you clearly have
autopsy,
said homicide, anoxia.
His death certificate's going to say undetermined.
I think they may have enough evidence. The cause of death is most likely going to be undetermined.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think the
There's
manner,
no way they can.
based on the charging, I think they're definitely at homicide. Okay. Now, here's the timeline, and this is where it gets really crazy, folks. Because keep in mind, we didn't know anything about this until Kymmi was contacted, and then she went into prayer and worship, praise and worship, and God, the Holy Spirit started revealing stuff to her, and she's sharing it with me, and I know that my place is to make no comments, and if I research it, I don't provide her with any information, but actually, and very smartly, we were kept in the dark. Friday, November 18th, Quinton's babysitter holds a candlelight vigil in his honor. And something else happened, but I'm not going to share that yet. Saturday, the 19th goes by. Sunday, November 20th, 2022 rolls around. And police announce that they are pausing the landfill search so that all these folks who have been out there, the searchers, the support teams, they can all take a break. Remember, Thanksgiving's coming along, and Waste Management's holiday schedule for the week is kicking in, okay? Now, that's the 20th, and I want to remind our listeners that you, Rev Kymmi, back on the 15th of November, told Chief Hadley that trash trucks picked up Quinton's remains and took them to the landfill, and that the mother is the primary suspect. So, Monday, November 21st, 2022 rolls around. And what happened on that day?
Well, we were busy for the day, and we come in about 6 hours after the official announcement by Chief Hadley at a press briefing sometime. And we just got back home, and we were settling in for the evening meal when I was moved by the Holy Spirit by a vision that they had found Quinton's remains in the landfill. And I asked you, did you Google it today? And you said no. And I said I hadn't either. I said, let's Google it.
Neither one of us had, except for checking email, neither one of us had Googled the news or turned on the TV all day. And we sit down with the plate in front of us and turned on Good Morning America, and you looked at me and you said, have you looked this up? What's the update? So I Googled it, and what did I find? The news, the presser, where the chief informed the public that on Friday, this is that event I was telling you about, on Friday they had found remains, evidence at the landfill, and preliminarily identified it as human remains. And they did some testing. Now keep in mind that was Friday, this announcement's on Monday. They did an announcement that they suspected very strongly that those remains belonged to Quinton, and they arrested the mother.
You know, Dr. G, I want to interrupt you here for a second. You know, I'm sure I'm not the only one here, but I didn't ever tell you that I was really praying a lot on this case. I felt sorry for all them digging through for a month in that landfill day after day. So when I was in like praise and worship, I'd be praying for them. I asked God, please send like angels to help them and cause them to find him. And I felt so bad because they were saying that it's very minimal chance that they were going to find him. And, you know, I felt sorry for him.
Yeah.
And I'm always moved on compassion, and I felt compassion for him. So I prayed a lot, as I'm sure a lot of other people were praying too. And hopefully it all made a difference with praying.
Yeah. And I'm not prophetic, but I had this sense that Chief Hadley was not going to quit, that he wasn't going to give up on his baby, Quinton. And I remember telling you repeatedly, they're going to go. If it takes 3 months, they're going to evacuate that entire landfill till they find this child. And boy, did they. Did they. Kudos. And they arrested the mother and charged her with the murder of her missing toddler, concealing the death of another, false statements in writings to conceal the facts, or fraudulent documents in matters of the government, and false report of a crime.
You know, I know that I read that they found, they had the bones confirmed as human. But since you're the expert, how did they do that? How did they determine that the remains were human? And how long does it take?
Well, I'm not going to... I've heard the term pedantic applied before, but I'll not be ostentatious in my knowledge. But we'll start. And I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with Locard's exchange principle that says when two objects come into contact, material between them can be transferred. And it could be DNA, in your sweat, or skin cells, or hair, or fibers, but something's going to be transferred. Unless you shave your body and use Nair on it and shower and then put on a rubber suit, even then, something is going to be transferred. We just need to know how to find it. So I thought about your question, and right off, based on my background, I can think of 3 ways in which they would do that. And now, he was out there for over a month. If you're buried in the ground, the rate of decay is usually about 8 times slower than if you're just laying on the surface. But there is already a lot of decaying matter there, so
I think
that's going to have an impact on it.
He was reported missing, October 5th? Yeah. But they searched in the landfill for a month because they didn't do it right off the bat, right? Because they were investigating. So he was in there for over a month.
Yeah, and we don't know how organized it is. Like you did research here on a case, and they know exactly what day the dumpsters and the trucks are dumped in what area and how far down to go.
But his human remains are going to be...
Yeah. So let's assume that there could be a combination of stuff there, evidence.
Well, the evidence is going to be messed with, is what I'm trying to say, is when the trash truck...
Oh, yeah.
And the trash truck, I think that there's a compactor in there.
Yeah.
And then there's also the landfill.
Loader,
you have a tractor
loader.
out there. Yeah. And, it's going to destroy evidence quite a bit.
But it's still going to be reasonably close to each other, hopefully. So 3 ways that I think they investigators could determine whether or not it's human remains. The first one would be on-site direct observation, and the presence of clearly identifiable human body, like tissue and bones, and possibly accompanied by clothing and footwear, glasses, jewelry, dental appliances like bridges or fillings. Of course, we're talking a young child, so we wouldn't have any of that.
Right.
But you could, if you found the teeth, you could, get an odontologist or forensic odontologist in there. Prostheses and braces. Now, I'm just talking about cases in general. Artificial limbs, knee braces, things like that. So that'd be number one. So maybe that's what they had to work with. We heard it was bones, but if it was, it's a worst case scenario, and they only had a few, then what? Well, then we have to move to 2 or 3. And number 2 would be on-site specimen testing. And that could be spray suspected areas with a chemiluminescent, like luminol or blue star. You've probably seen that on TV. They spray it and then they get the black light out and it lights up, it turns blue, and that's a reaction to the iron and other antigens in the blood and stuff like that. And it's referred to as a presumptive test. Now, presumptive tests are quick tests used to screen evidence for the presence of bodily fluids, and there are other bodily fluids that can trigger this as well. A presumptive test is positive if it indicates that a bodily fluid is likely present, but the test does not officially identify it. So you really do need to take it to the next step. And they did say in the media that it was preliminary identification. So maybe this was what they did. Now, I'm not going to tell you what they are. You can research it online. But there are certain animals and there are other things that will create false positives with luminol and blue star. And that was discussed in the Quinton Smart case when they tested the area underneath the deck, and they said
they were trying to use it as a defense.
Yep, their expert came in and said
what animal?
Ferret blood.
Yeah, the ferret blood
could do it, and there are others. I think one
they were
article
reaching.
I saw was goat. I'd never heard that
reaching.
But there are false positives because, like I said, it does react to antigens and it does react to the iron in the blood. So, like, one of the tests is to spray it on a penny and see if it lights up, and the copper and the iron and stuff like that. Now, the third one, and this is where it really gets detailed. The third one would be specimen collection at the site, and then you take it to a lab for testing. And this gets into the quantitative and other aspects of the testing that we call confirmatory tests, which are used as reactions of the blood components, reagents, more specific for identification of blood. And if they had blood, like on clothing or in the bone, they could even use the bone too, then they would test more specifically. And then you can test not only for the human blood, but you can look at blood typing, which doesn't tell me it's necessarily yours or mine, because we both could be O positive.
But it'll match like Quinton's known blood type, right?
Right. And if it's different from his mom's or anyone else that's missing at that time. And then DNA as well. And then, there's a host of different DNAs that can be tested. There's regular DNA, there's cDNA or complementary or copy DNA, messenger DNA, mitochondrial DNA. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can test there. Blood type, though, it's really interesting with blood type. We're talking about ABO blood types, like we have for humans. And in my research, I remember when they first had this. You remember when they went in and they found bin Laden, killed him, and they tested his DNA. And within days, they had gotten rid of his body at sea because they didn't want him memorialized and so forth. And I was thinking, how did they get DNA identification in such a short period of time? Well, there is a system out there, and you can look it up online. I'm not going to advertise for them, but it will produce field results that are preliminary within 90 minutes. And there's a couple different tests, and of course you can take it in, do the, stretch it out and give it a whole week or 3 days.
Well, I know that on this case, on Quinton's case, they don't know for sure yet. They haven't had an affirmation that it's him. So they're doing DNA testing.
Yeah.
But it's not taking 90 minutes.
They may have done blood typing, or, it can take anywhere from 90 minutes. But some of the really good systems that are out there, tests that are available, can knock it out in 72 hours, 3 days.
Huh, okay.
So we should be hearing pretty soon. And the fact that they charged her, and they're really sure that it's sadly Quinton's results. And you can see here in my notes, I got all the names of all the different tests that they could do and stuff like that. And there's a brand new one out there that uses. I found it at the University of Albany here in the States. They use spectroscopy and Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy. That sounds like physics to me. But this is getting really technical. One of the things I found in looking at blood typing, and I'd never heard this before. I know that in my family we do have Rh negative and it's AB negative and stuff like that. And I was quite surprised to find that the Rh stands for rhesus monkeys, because researchers had recognized very early on that this human blood antigen was similar to that in rhesus monkeys' blood antigen. So that's why when you see the Rh, it's in tribute, more or less, to the rhesus monkeys. So I learned something today in researching all this about blood types. I did not know that. So anyway, I am confident, based on what I've read in the newspaper and looking at the diligence of Chief Hadley and all the folks who were involved. I mean, they brought to bear the weight of law enforcement, the FBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, the Chatham County Sheriff's Office, Savannah Police Department, Liberty County Sheriff's Office, Chatham Emergency Management, Chatham Emergency Services, Savannah Fire Department, the Chatham County Parks and Recreation, Chatham County Occupational Safety, Waste Management itself, and a host of volunteers, off-duty officers, and everything else. They were all out there trying to bring justice for this poor child.
From the moment from being reported October 5th to resolution.
And to find him in a
just
landfill,
a little a month and a half.
Monumental task.
Yeah, they did a lot. And, quite frankly, my information didn't help them, other than maybe it just affirmed information for them. And also the encouragement to keep going.
Yeah. Well, I think that went both ways. You affirmed their work, and then their eventual... you told them on the 14th, and we didn't learn until the 21st.
Yeah, a month. I mean, it was a week later.
Everything you had told them.
Right.
Had come to pass.
Well, usually the information from God's accurate.
You affirmed their work, and they affirmed God's knowledge and power.
What He told me,
God's gift, yes.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So, yeah, this case was, again, I get really emotional with these cases and people brutalizing their children. It just really upsets
I think we should
me.
take just a moment of silence just to think of poor little Quinton.
Amen.
And may he have, proper justice, and to rest in peace. And in closing, I just want to thank you all for listening, and please click follow and share with your family and friends our podcast. Yep. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you on our next episode.
Yep. And once you've listened to our podcast, please go on Rev Kymmy's Facebook page or on mine and Doc Gilbertson, and send us a message. Post somewhere on there. We usually post an advertisement about our podcast, and let us know what you think about it. And please join us on a regular basis. Give us some ideas and cases that like this one. I mean, wow. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.